So it is October 12th. It's 2 a.m. in the morning, almost 3. And it's like the best time of the day for me to do this because the days are so hectic, and lately I haven't been able to get any time to myself, which it's not pertinent to the video, but still. I keep trying and failing to make this video about sin. When I first had the idea, which was however many days ago, I should have recorded it right then, but I totally just slacked off, and now like the idea is a little more distant than it was, so it's kind of hard for me to relive that aha moment that I had, but I'm going to try to do a better job of explaining it here. So I think that we get caught up about what sin actually is. Most people know at least that sin is things that are bad, doing bad things, bad behavior, immoral things, wrong things. And all those things are true. But people don't really know what makes sin, or what causes sin, or when you read the Bible, you can get really confused about sin, or at least you'd have to reevaluate what culture has told us that God thinks is sin over what man thinks is sin. And then we get all up in arms about it, especially people who have memories of being a child, being in church culture, and being told something was a sin, and either that thing was used as a form of control or shame, or told to you by some adult that wasn't really concerned about how it would haunt you for life. They just knew that they wanted to warn you in that moment, and maybe you were too young to understand, or they were just not sensitive enough, or not knowledgeable enough, not mature enough to responsibly pass that information on to you. I think we've all had instances in our lives where someone else has negatively influenced us about sin, and we later went the opposite direction of what that person told us, or we found out that maybe what that person told us was totally exaggerated or whatever. And I think in my case, like, I came across a lot of things where I immediately, inherently knew something was wrong with what I did, even if it was like not anything obvious or elaborate or whatever. I have a really strange memory of being little and just having a countdown, kind of having an accumulation of things that I had done wrong that I remembered. Maybe like a dozen things, I would say. Probably not even that many, but they were weighing on me. Like, I just had this guilt of these things that I had done, things that I had stolen or taken out of somebody's room or whatever, and I felt like I had caused a rift in my relationship to these people in my family. Like, I just felt like I was on the lam or something. I was just like feeling like a rogue renegade, like I need to really make amends for this, and having these, like, imagining these scenarios where I would stand in the living room in front of everybody and tell them all the things I had done and get it off my chest. Like, that was the point of me imagining. It was me just fantasizing about getting that stuff out in the open, and them just like sitting and listening and everything being okay afterward. So, like, I had this inner knowing that the things that I had done were basically literally unbearable. Like, I couldn't bear them, and I wanted to get them off of me, and I knew also that the way to do that was to confess them. And I imagined a scenario that I could do that without judgment and be free. So, I think that in some cases people have a tendency to either take sin too lightly and say, well, it's just a cultural, like a social construct to keep people in line or whatever, or, dismiss it altogether, or to say, well, this is our nature, it's part of us, and we need to embrace it. And then, of course, you have people on the other, complete opposite side of the spectrum that say, every sin is, whatever awful religious stereotype you can think of. So, but I had this kind of revelation, I guess. We took our kids to the park. We went to this park that has trails, pretty large park. And on one of the trails, there's little places where you can kind of go off the trail and look over the river. And there was there was like a little plaque or whatever, and it was talking about that particular river and how it was formed and how rivers widen over time because they flow in one direction, and they flow against the soil, and then the soil erodes and gives way to the river, and that river widens, but it also causes, I guess, deposits in the soil, or it makes the soil rich, or some environment where things can grow. And I just was looking at that, and I was really contemplating just how interesting and how amazing nature is, because everything it does causes an environment for life. It's just it's kind of self-sufficient in that way. When you have a river, it's like you got everything. Or even fire is the same way. It burns, but then something how that breaks down, and then it causes fertile things to grow. And so you have the same thing with water. And literally water flowing is causing these conditions for life and goodness, I guess. And I had this fleeting thought that was I think I had this silly thought of well, I wonder what would happen if water just decided to stop doing its job, or if one element was you know what, I'm taking a day off or whatever. And I don't know, I just suddenly got this connection. I guess it was a revelation of water not doing its job, being the natural, and being nature's version of sin, of what sin would be. What would sin be in nature? It would be water not flowing, soil not, causing things to grow. Those things are sin. You know what? I think sin is anything that disrupts the natural way that things flow and make room for life to grow. Because, when you think about it, even though we're not water and trees and dirt and all that, we're intelligent and we have a sovereign will that God has given us. I think that if we could imagine ourselves without sin, which would be very difficult, it would be beyond just, oh, well, you're perfect and you never make a mistake. You're in a constant state of making life-giving conditions to everyone around you. I think about my kids. They're really good kids. They're smart, they're well-behaved, they're content, they're just really good kids. And I'm sitting there trying to think of what I did exactly to cause them to be this way, or did I do anything? Did they just come to me this way? And I just kind of helped foster that and didn't neglect them or beat them or do anything that would hamper that. And basically, yeah, that's basically what I did. When you take care of something, when you love something, when you bond with something, all those things are not sin. All those things are things you can have in abundance. There's no limit, there's no law against those things, as Galatians would say. And it caused an environment where they could grow properly. And yes, do I do things wrong? Yes, I would call that sin. And it would be those times where, for whatever reason, I don't want to naturally do the things that occur to everything else in nature. Just the way the river flows against the soil causes the river to widen, and it does those things over time, naturally, consistently. It would be like me going, you know what? Me being water and saying, screw this, I want to go this other way. I just want to splash all the way out on the ground and be different. I'm going to be different. Or, I don't want to keep flowing this way. I'm not going to keep helping the soil. It's not doing nothing for me. Or, I'm in a bad mood. I'm just going to stop flowing because I don't feel like I'm feeling underappreciated. I'm water. Nobody gives me a shout out. Like, all these things that that we just shrug off. Selfishness. I mean, I don't think we shrug them off, but we consider them negative, but we won't go so far as to say that they're sin. If water could have those things, if water had intelligence, I don't even think water is less intelligent than us. I think it just doesn't have the sovereign will that we have, that God gave us. If water had a will and we suddenly witnessed the water stop doing its job, we would be like, what in God's name? What caused the water to do this? Be freaking, tornadoes and hurricanes, like all this stuff would be caused because water just decided, you know what? I'm taking a day off today. I'm going to be lazy today or whatever. And we would wonder, like, what could be stopping the water from being itself? It's kind of like that's what sin is for us. What we think is just maybe a part of life or a part of our who we are that we should embrace, our light and dark side. It's like we are literally stopping the flow of life. It probably is something that looks to everyone else outside of creation, like to God, to the angels or whoever, like it's just so egregious to see when we do something that's like against, we're the only creatures on the planet not doing our job. The grass is doing its job, the sky's doing great, the air molecules are cool, the animals are straight, even though they kind of get a little annoyed because, like, I don't know, we're spraying chemicals in their environment or whatever. The bees are all dying, like, so they're probably a little bit annoyed, but, volcanoes, everything else knows what to do in its season. Fall comes, the leaves fall off the trees. They don't go, well, you know what? I feel like in my soul that I am a green leaf all the time, and I just feel like that's my truth, that I need to stay on this tree and not die, because since I was a child, I felt like, I was always green. So that's just me, and I just feel like you need to respect that. No, nothing in nature is doing that. Only us. And we just probably look like the most ridiculous, like, just stopping the flow of life. Like, anything that's stopping the flow of life is sin. The Bible says, when you know the good that you're supposed to do and don't do it, that's sin. And I remember reading that when I was like a teenager, like, whoa, like, hold on now. Like, because I'm not one of those people that's going to go out and do like some elaborate sin, because I'm pretty prudent. But then the downside is I'm so prudent that sometimes I won't do things that I know I should do. Won't step up or won't speak out or whatever. And over time, that's gotten better. But, I remember reading that as a teenager, like, oh, crap. Like, there's no hiding place, If you're somebody who doesn't go out and raise hell or whatever, you can't look down on someone else who does that, because if you're hanging back too much, then that can be a sin too. So you're not off the hook either. But I think ultimately it has nothing to do, it's not about condemnation. It's not about God having these impossible standards. It's about, he gave us the choice to either go along with nature. And what is nature? Nature is everything in the universe cooperating to put the conditions in place to bring life. That's what nature is. And he's given us the choice of whether to go along with that or not, because if he wanted animatronic robots, he would make those. And when sin entered the world, the Bible, I think we all know the biblical story somewhat of how that happened. But what it seems to have done is caused us to change our nature from what God intended to a sin nature, which is to naturally go against the conditions that bring life, to bring death, to bring chaos. So we're kind of, even though our nature has been changed to that, we're still created by God, and our wiring and our bent and our optimal performance is found in the things of God. But we find them very hard to do because that's not our nature anymore. Our nature has been corrupted. And even as a Christian, that is still true. It doesn't go away just because you become a Christian. God redeems us, and he puts his spirit in us, but he doesn't take away our sin nature. So there's still a contention within who we are. And there's always, because I believe that God does that so that we always have an option. So we're always in tune with our sin nature as well as our supernatural, God-given spiritual nature. And we always have to make the choice whether to do wrong or do right. And when we do right, then we're rewarded, and God can see that we love him because we have two choices and we make the right one instead of the bad one. And I think people don't understand this about Christians, or maybe we don't articulate it very well, but we don't become super people just because we become Christians. God gives us light. We're no longer stumbling around in darkness. We become, we're able to see things, which is how I'm able to do videos like this and make connections, in my world, and not just stumble around blind like, I wonder why we do that. Oh, anyway, blah. Not to make fun of other people that do that, but, and how those people often are not Christians. But, and it's not knowledge, it's not enlightenment God gives you. He gives you revelation. He just drops it in your spirit, and you trust that information. It's not something that you can, I guess you can't, obviously many people have gotten prideful in their ability to get knowledge from God, but because he gets it, you get it directly from him and not your own, pursuit and your own knowledge. You don't get puffed up by your own abilities. It's God-given wisdom that you ask for, and he gives it to you. So you're constantly drawing from him. But yeah, it's not the sin nature. The sin nature does not go away. That's why you can't condemn a Christian. You find some weird thing that they did out or whatever, or something from 10 years ago. You can't do that, because that doesn't mean that person is not a Christian. It might mean that they are weak in the faith. It might mean that they had a moment of weakness, or they were isolated because they stopped going to church, or they stopped reading their Bible, and they had no way to fight when the time came to make the right choice. They couldn't overpower their sin nature. That's all that means. And then sometimes when Paul is talking about going to this Christian or that Christian and confronting them, or expel the immoral brother or whatever, he's talking about Christians who make a habit or a routine of doing that, which basically means like, okay, dude, are you even trying to walk this out? Because if you're not, then you need to not influence the rest of these people that are trying to do it. So it's not judgment. That's not condemnation from within the Christian, community. That is accountability. And sometimes it gets out of control and some people do it wrong, but when you don't know why, that's when you get all these weird things happen, because people don't understand the root of why they're doing something that the Bible's telling them to do, because they've just been told and they don't know why. So basically, to recap, everything in nature works together to make life, to create life-giving conditions. And humans are the same way. We can speak into someone's life. We can bring forth children, raise them in a supportive, healthy environment. We can speak up for justice, choose not to look at that negative thing or that harsh thing or that obscene thing. Choose to look at something positive, to say something positive, to do something nice for someone who hasn't done anything for us. All these things create life. And I think ultimately sin is winning out. And I think it ebbs and flows over time. And, let's not forget that we have help. We got help on both sides here. So, ultimately it's going to come to a head. And this is just the first video, and not really a series, but there's another thought that I had that I'm going to get to that has to do with sin, but I just wanted to put kind of a basic understanding of sin first and talk about that, and then go into my next point. So anyway, I hope that helps somebody who is struggling with the concept of sin, and if not, I'm probably going to elaborate on it more in the coming days.